welcome to the Scrumdown, your weekly rugby fix. My name is Skulk, and today I'm joined again by Peter van Ooselen, our news anchor on Sports One. Welcome, Peter, to the show today.
Skulk, thanks for having me. Good to be here. Lots on the go.
I see you very patriotic today. Didn't get the memo, but thank you. always keen for a rugby jersey. Why not?
Sure.
Right,
Yeah.
so today we're going to have a look through what's trending in the news in rugby, firstly for the past week or so, and then all the action in the URC is obviously hotting up. We've just been down round 5, so we definitely see some interesting developments within the log especially, so we're going to get to that in a second. Fantastic, so I think let's get into it. So into the rugby news first. So we have spoken in the previous episode about the new rule change that is being trailed by World Rugby, where a red card is going to be only valid then for 20 minutes, and then you can bring one of your other players onto the field, not the player that's been substituted, right? So we've seen a bit of a backlash this past week, or weeks really. So first, France came out guns blazing, say, listen, they are not in favour of this rule change, and seemingly this past week, Ireland joined this the sentiment. Their reasoning for this is basically to say, listen, it does open up for foul play, and some teams might use it in their own advantage to actually misuse the system. I don't know, what's your thoughts on that?
So it's what's interesting, Scott, is that the Bulls have now had 2 back-to-back red cards, and both of them have been rescinded in the subsequent disciplinary proceedings. And I actually listened to the interview with Jack White after last week's red card, and he was asked by journalists about what he felt about the rule, and he was vehemently against it. And there were a couple of reasons that he said. Obviously, as we saw this weekend, the red card was given, the Bulls went on to lose, so what's the point of giving those 20 minutes back?
And it actually killed the game, because the Bulls did lose the game, and that was that critical last quarter of the game.
And he actually, I don't know if he said it flippantly or jokingly, but he said, what about introducing an orange card? And I'll tell you why. So he says, obviously the yellow card, 10 minutes off. Then the orange card would be between a red card and a yellow card, and then a red card, and that's it. If you get a red card, there's no going back. You lose the player. There's no 20 minutes. Do you know what I mean? Because a red card, he says, is a red card. It's warranted a red card. But he says there's too much grey area now. You putting additional pressure on referees, you're putting additional pressure on video referees, and it's not good for the game.
I think it's a very good point, because even if you think about it, so this last weekend's red card for Grobler, what happened was the Scotland player actually broke through a tackle, so Grobler wasn't initially the tackler, broke through the tackle, and he had to react to that. So it wasn't on purpose, it was really just, in many ways, would have been referred to as a rugby collision. It's just making contact, and obviously he wasn't prepared for it. But then again, if you look closely, it wasn't a high shot. It was really, it was shoulder given, but really, he couldn't prevent it even if he tried to. So I think in such cases, one needs to kind of look at it, because at the end of the day, with red cards, it's malicious, it's intent. And in this case, it's a rugby collision. So I think it's a fantastic idea to have some middle way to say, okay, well, listen, according to the book, yes, it's in that area, but listen, are we going to be killing the game? Because the argument would be then, well, listen, from a spectator point of view also, the fact is that we don't want to see 14 people on the pitch. We want to have a strength-to-strength game that's fair throughout. So it makes a very good point, and I think more's going to happen on this. We'll trying to keep our eye on what's happening with especially France and Ireland.
It's also he made the point that the red card stays against your name, and not a lot of players want that red card. Red card after red card against your name.
And you start getting up a reputation of being a foul player, which is not necessarily the case. Exactly. You might just be that flanker that's always need to do the cross defense, and you're a little bit in that red zone. But I think it's good, and I think that the game needs to adapt to this, because you're quite right. The players looks like a little bit unsure on how to react in certain cases and how to take those impact. But also keep in mind that they want to keep the game as safe as possible. And I think so the intention is there, but the fact is it's still a collision sport, right? So
yeah, for sure. But I mean, as you saw this weekend, it may have cost the Bulls the game. When in fact, going back and looking at the footage, it wasn't a red card. So what are you saying now?
So even with the red card being turned over, it still had an impact on the game. So the only benefit is, yes, Grobler can play this weekend, but still, and that one loss might just cost the Bulls a playoff spot at the end of the season, which really isn't fair. I think it also opens up a bit of a discussion on the quality of the referees. Again, I think you made the point last week that because of the crowd reaction, then they actually looked at the incident. Same thing happened against the Scarlets. So the player actually went down holding his head. One would think, I don't want to say he milked it, but definitely trying to get attention to the fact there was head contact, and only after that progressed into it.
But also the RB are trying to speed up the game, Scott. So, but now they're stopping and then they're looking at the screens, and then it kind of slows the game down again, and then the crowd get involved that we've seen before, and if it's a home crowd, then it's like,
and then some emotions come into play and everything else.
Exactly. I mean, so you've got to take that all into account because the RB are trying to speed up the game. That's what they're trying to do. So you've got to make those decisions quickly. You can't sit and look at video footage on the side of the field.
But it also need to be consistent. To have this happen twice with the Bulls, twice in 2 weeks, really this is unacceptable. And I think it also brings a bit of spotlight on how accurate are they really, because especially if you refer to a team, now you had the time, had a look through it, still be turned over. I think that's... Also, it feels like, and I don't want to be that guy, but it does feel like a lot of South African teams are getting a little bit criticised on that situation. So, not to go into that space, but it feels like, especially the Bulls now, really been targeted.
And they've got 2 months now to decide. I think they were wanting to decide at the beginning of January whether they're going to put this into law or not. So
the thing is, it's been trialled, like we mentioned before, at the Varsity Cup level here in South Africa through the Rugby Championship. So it's been well received, but seemingly there is some backlash. Listen, let's keep the politics for the people upstairs. But I think they'll need to look at all
to politics.
But I think it's getting solutions, and I think Jake White, being the mastermind he is, that's actually not a bad suggestion at all. But on the positive side, we had a look at Rassie. He's always in the news. A little bit quiet now that the Springboks haven't played. So World Rugby President Bill Beaumont actually made the comment that he's not in favour with the whole substitution rule, and he feels that a lot of teams are being, how can I say, taking advantage of the ruling as such. Obviously taking a bit of a jab at the bomb squad we spoke about before. Rassie never shied to back down on a conversation, and he responded to that tweet, and maybe let me just quickly read it through. So the tweet actually said, "Bomb squad, ? Good thing games are won and lost on the field and not in the boardroom." And it makes for good entertainment value. Rassie is always there, just keeping him alive, but defending his stance. And I think it's the good. There's a lot of discussion on, okay, is this because the argument that World Rugby is trying to make is that looking at, in the tradition of rugby, your last 20 minutes is where the stamina comes through and like that perseverance. And this whole way of Rassie actually adapting.
I mean, what are they saying then, Scott? What is the alternative? Just to everyone must play unless they're injured.
Remember, the intention of reserves was if someone gets hurt, you bring in a reserve. So this is far from those amateur days.
You're opening up a can of worms there.
Exactly.
Because I can be injured right now. And
and I can tell you, even in the amateur days, fake injuries were a common theme. They can't pick up his leg next week; they're ready to play again.
The problem is they don't have the depth that we've got. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? We've got a full pack of 8 forwards that can come on after 60 minutes and be as good as the ones in the first 60 minutes.
But that's exactly the point, and that's just the evolution of the game. And I think World Rugby being very conservative in many points, this is just one of the things they need to kind of just work with. But let's see, any rule change, I'm sure Rassie and some very clever coaches out there will see how they can benefit from this. So
don't take on Rassie. Rassie, you will lose.
That's exactly that. So, and then also in the past week, the Women's World Cup pools have been announced. So this is quite exciting. So as we mentioned before, the next Rugby World Cup for ladies is being played in England. And if we look at the pools, South Africa found themselves quite in an interesting pool. France and Italy, the two main competitors, and then, interesting enough, joined by BRICS nation counterpart in Brazil. What do you think?
What we mustn't look at is the same standard in the men's game as in the women's game in terms of international standards. Do you know what I mean? I mean, we're not, take example for us, we're not nearly as high up the world rankings as our men counterpart. But I mean, it's always, the New Zealand ladies are always very, very good. The English ladies are always up there as well.
And Australian ladies.
Australia and the Americans as well. They picked up big time in women's rugby. So that pool A, looks difficult with England, Australia, and the USA.
Yeah.
And then Pool C looks difficult with New Zealand, Ireland.
Yeah. So Pool B, not taking away from Canada, ladies, they have been really on the up. But I think you're quite right. I think that Pool A can be classified as the pool of death. And I think for us being in Pool D, I think the strongest opposition would be France, definitely. But for the rest, I can definitely see us going through quarterfinals at this stage. And I think also with...
Just remind us, so it's the same as the Men's World Cup.
Exactly that.
You've got to get through to the top 2 of your pool.
You top 2 of the pool, go through quarterfinals, semi-finals, finals. Correct, yeah. So that is what you're playing for. But I think I can definitely see ourselves placed there, and then most likely we'll need to face up against the New Zealand ladies, the Silver Ferns, most probably in Pool C after that. So, yeah, quite interesting times, but we'll keep our eye on that. And I think with Swayze the Brain taking charge with the coaching of that ladies Springbok team, I think we are really in a good space, and they give us another year to build up to the World Cup, which is fantastic.
No, that's a favourable pool. Pool D is where you want to be, I think. That's the best way to go.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
So I think that's all for the news at this stage. Let's quickly turn our attention to the URCs. So over the weekend, we have now seen quite a few interesting results. Let me quickly run through what we have seen. So Bulls going down to the Scarlets with that single point. Red card, definitely the big debate in that game. Zebre Parma was against the Lions playing in Italy. That was, unfortunately, that is our team, but it was a bit of a snooze fest because that was wet, and the Lions couldn't play their running game, but they did muscle it out, winning 9-10 at the end. Sharks back home for the first time, put up a great show against the Warriors. Listen, it was a bit of a tick for tack with regards to the scoreline, but at the end of the day, they pulled it through. Then we saw Stormers hosting Munster, and listen, give it to Cape Town crowd. We spoke about how the crowd will react to the Stormers on the road. We saw them coming out in numbers, 30,000 plus at that game at Greenpoint Stadium. Fantastic game. Scoreline a little bit flattering at the end, was much closer, 34-19 win for the Stormers. But listen, Munster did give it them all. And then we see the so that's back at the winning way, and that's looking at 3 out of 4 for the South African teams, which is not bad.
What it's showing is that home ground advantage is so important now.
It is massive.
The gruel travel, getting there cold, wet in Europe, versus coming back home to having your home crowd, your home comforts. It's showing that it's important.
And you definitely see the South African teams playing their style of rugby now. A bit more out of the hand, bit more running, bit more kicking, bit more strategic passing, kicking. So very well. So I think Sharks and Stormers on the road wasn't really putting up the performance that they should. But back home, they were back on fire. So I want to sit down with the Sharks firstly. So Sharks played, and you saw Siakulisi back in the team, where you had Etzebeth leading the team, so a lot of experience and Grant coming back into the team, and that definitely did show. Also keep in mind that Glasgow Warriors is the defending champions, right? So having a bit of a tough tour at the moment in South Africa, and the Sharks definitely didn't make it any easier. Stormers also see a lot of Springboks back in the mix. Willems is back after his long injury. He put up a man of the match performance, which is fantastic. You can just see the guys are in the mood to play that running rugby, which is fantastic. So, and then, looking at that Bulls game, also yet again, Bulls really, I think the second half again, they see themselves fading. So not all blame can be on the red card, but listen, I did feel that they were really in control of the whole game and just slipped.
With regards to the Sharks and the Stormers, they're now 12th and 13th. Even despite those wins, they don't want to be falling too far behind so early on, because then you're playing catch up.
No, but you'll see them catching up now very quickly, I'm sure.
So, Leinster way ahead up at the top there. The Lions there. That loss by the Bulls could be costly. I mean, they would have been 4 wins from 4 games. So that's going to hurt Jack White. It's going to,
absolutely. So I think
considering what happened with the red card and that being rescinded, so they're still up there in the top 4. They'll want to stay obviously in the top 8 to try and keep things.
I think we could run through that lock standing, seeing that that's where our conversation is going. So Leinster. Listen, Peter, that's still the team to beat. This team is on 5 out of 5, but I think how they win is massive. If you they just look like the complete package at the moment. Archie Snyman, South African mix there, scoring another brilliant try. We're going to get to that in a second. But listen, hats off to the Lions. Second week on tour, horrible situation weather-wise. Still managed to grind it out. Thank goodness we saw the same weather with the Currie Cup final. That didn't go the way of the Lions at all. So I think they're taking some experience from those situations, hopefully, and we'll see that. Then we still have to, like you said, the Bulls still there, number 4. Remember, one week or two have for both Bulls and Lions. Then they're back home, and hopefully we're going to see a bit of a change of events there. And then thank goodness we don't have those bottom of the logs for the Stormers and the Sharks. So their ascendancy back to the top 8 hopefully will be at home.
Look. As I said, they don't want to fall too far behind.
No, absolutely.
You know, on 10, Sharks on 10, Stormers on 10.
Yeah.
You know, they've got to get up. You know, at the moment the cutoff is 12. It's still early days.
Still early days, but listen, we are making up ground, right? So we're a quarter through this tournament. So, and I think we can definitely start seeing which teams are kind of looking in there. I think what we're going to start seeing from next week is a little bit more depth in those squads. You know, we'll start seeing rotations in some key positions, and I think the teams who's best prepared would be the ones with the best depth. That's where like Stormers and Sharks, they're going to be shining. And the Sharks got so much depth that, you know, they're going on a spending spree buying new players for the past 2 seasons, and it's really showing. They've got for that match they played, they had 16 Springboks in their 23.
And Siya Kolisi scoring. I think
Siya Kolisi scoring after his little break after the championship, still there. And then obviously it's a bit just just the man, the myth, the legend, just putting that grunt there at the front. So, but things are definitely heating up. Let's quickly run through those results. Apart from the South African results, we had Ulster, good win against the Ospreys. Then also we had Edinburgh taking down Cardiff, which is quite nice, home win for them there. Then Leinster, we spoke about 33-12 against Connacht, their Irish counterparts. That's a away win for them, fantastic. And then the Dragons putting up a good fight. Shame, I do feel for the Dragons. They tend to not really getting guns blazing, going down to Benetton. Which is, we know, the stronger of the Italian teams. So I think good results. But I just hope that the weather changes in Europe. We can just see a bit more running rugby, man.
It's not going to happen.
Thank you for the optimism. Let's play more games in South Africa.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Cool. Well, listen, I think that's a wrap up for our URC. Now, let's quickly have a look on what's been trending in social media. So, the first clip we want to play is Anton de Pont. His offload in the top 14 game for Toulouse. Now, many still reckon, and maybe, Peter, I need to get your opinion on this, reckon that the term GOAT, as they say, greatest of all time, being thrown around and saying the Pond is the guy. He, again, showed his class, backflip, offload, caught catching the opposition off guard. And
he's a typical number 9. He's wily, he's smart, he's quick. He's got vision. He can see what's going on around him. And that little incident just showed. And we saw it in the World Cup as well. How important he was.
Well, and he's like a national treasure in France. Remember during the Rugby World Cup, he broke his cheekbone against that Namibia game. They
fell apart.
So a normal player being ruled out for at least 3-4 months, they got him on a special South African term, muti there, and to get him ready for the South African game, playing with the headgear. But this guy's a national treasure, and he just really seems to get everything together. And don't forget, he did manage to get a gold medallion at the Olympic Games? Yeah, for the sevens team.
So
coming off of the sevens, and that was his goal to achieve that goal. So
amazing.
Ironically enough, not a World Cup, but he definitely
he'll take it. He'll take it.
Exactly. All-round player, fantastic, and you're gonna love to see this still in a professional league like for the top 14 to see that still being played out. So that's fantastic. Our second one, Peter, talking about wet weather. So this is a drenched club rugby game, so just an amateur game done in England, but we see a player we spoke about Papi scoring probably the best individual try of the season. On a club level, I think this is as good as it gets. So running from basically his own goal line, putting through 2 chip kicks, a grubber kick, and scoring, sliding over in that muddy weather.
Well, I guess what's nice about this try is that you don't really have to decide where the ball's going to bounce because it doesn't really bounce. It kind of because it's so wet.
I almost want to say
it just
kind of floats,
sticks,
right?
Yeah, it sticks in the ground, so you can kick it.
You can kick it, but still, well timed, and he managed to run through the
Run,
whole team to go score.
In the mud.
But listen, you got to love those. And playing club rugby myself, you always have this one player that just seemed to have all the skill sets to make that happen. So fantastic.
That was a great try, yeah.
And then I need to focus again on our man, RG, the Viking Snyman.
He picks up that ball like it's a tennis ball.
So remember last week we covered where he had this pop down, catching the line on one ball. Yeah. Seems like balls just stick in his hand. So you see in this clip that he runs through, gets knocked back by but that ball just sticks. What I did love about this clip is his post-match celebration, or post-try celebration, where he still didn't manage to get that.
I can show you.
He still
like us.
give me a shot.
You hold it like this.
No, listen, that guy is man possessed. So gotta love the Viking.
But the skill is there as well.
And listen, second try for his second game for Leinster. Not a bad purchase by the Irish team, right? So
yeah. He's a Viking.
He's a Viking,
and he scores tries as well.
That's what he does. But listen, Peter, I think that kind of brings us to the end of this conversation.
We just quickly we wanted to touch on the whole SA Rugby equity deal quickly for 1 minute.
I forgot about that one.
Just quickly, in terms of the developments. I mean, I was chatting about Jake White talking about the red card rules, but he also kind of not weighed in. He preferred not to weigh in. But just in terms of how he sees, the sale of the equity deal. And how strong South African rugby is at the moment, and whether we're actually getting value for money. Because a couple of years ago, and you spoke last week about how the All Blacks, it was a similar big deal, and it kind of went pear-shaped with them because they didn't feel like they got the equity that they needed to get out of the All Black brand. And at that stage, the All Blacks were in a similar position to us, world champions, brilliant brand. So there's still a lot of question marks around that.
And I think you mentioned the All Blacks now, but I think we also did speak in the past about the Premiership, the Premiership clubs. Very similar scenario where they had equity partners coming into the Premiership in England. To a point where the unions or the clubs lost so much revenue that you saw three of the clubs going bust in a space of 2 seasons, just purely because they went bankrupt. They just couldn't afford, and that cash injection that wasn't coming through as it should. There's a lot of variables. I think a lot of times they set up these deals thinking that TV rights, revenue, everything else will increase, where we actually saw a bit of a decline, and now everything is just not adding up. So
I think what we've also got to realize is that SARU is a membership organisation. That they're not a standalone body that dictates to the unions. The unions actually appoint them, and they've got to have they've got to be in agreement with what's going to how to take it forward.
And that's exactly what we saw. So last week there was supposed to be that meeting on the 17th. That was postponed purely because 7 of the unions said not interested. They don't like how it's all been presented. They see a lot of loopholes. To the point that it was escalated to the sports minister, who then said, listen, let's put everything on hold for now. They want to get more transparency on exactly what the deal entails. And I think not a bad call again. I think it feels like and I think the big risk here is that they're looking at a they get 20% stake equity. That's what they're paying for. But there's no time frame attached to this. This is indefinite. And I think long term, as soon as that deal has been paid off, you'll still see them cashing in from an external party into. And I think that puts a little bit of fear into most of the unions specifically.
It is complicated. I mean, the real value is in what ASG, that Ackley Sports Group, can bring to SARU. You know what I mean? From an international market point of view. Do you know what I mean? What can they bring?
So I see what's being discussed is that it's not off the table, not this deal specifically. So it seems like this deal with AG is going a bit south. But in general, they're still looking for an equity partner, more balance. I think maybe with different from the New Zealand one is that they actually got an equity partner that actually invested in the business or into the brand, not as an investment, not as a partnership in the sense of them kind of pulling too much revenue in the future. So hopefully we can get that sweet spot. I know there's also a lot of talks with the different unions. Obviously they all the big franchises at least got their own investors, and seemingly there's some interest from them to actually expand into the Springbok brand and Saru in total.
Anyway,
so
we'll see
so
what
let's see.
happens.
It's definitely going to be there.
See what
and I
happens,
think
yeah.
last thing we actually didn't touch on is what to look forward for this week. So your C continues round 6. So let's quickly run through them. We see Bulls now, like we mentioned, in their final tour game, playing against Benetton in Italy. I hope the weather clears up, so a bit more of a better game. But I think it's going to be another tough one for the Bulls on the road. It's going to be the third week on tour. We saw the other 2 South African teams struggle in their third week. So let's hope there's stamina show. Hopefully there's no yellow or red cards again, please. Let's not go for a hat-trick this time around. I'm sure the match official will also be quite conscious now to say, listen, 2 red cards in a row being turned over. They might put some pressure on them, hopefully. So let's see. Storm was hosting the champions, Glasgow Warriors. Now, what I like about this game is it's actually been played at Stellenbosch at the Donny Craven Stadium. We spoke about last time also on crowd attendance and South Africa being blessed with these monster stadiums and we're not filling them up, especially not for derby games. What a nice initiative to have, and I know they did this in the past. I'm not sure what the arrangement is for this week, but I know in the past because, as we know, Donny Craven is at the Stellenbosch University, and usually they have like free beers for the first 2,000 people arriving there, especially students.
More streakers.
Wow, bringing some value to everything else. So I think that's quite nice in the sense of just getting a bit more of a family vibe, and I think, listen, a lot of the other franchises can learn from this. Give, for these other games, get them out. For us Joburgers to go into Ellis Park, it's quite difficult to get there. Get you a local rugby club with a nice stadium, fill it up. Let's get some gears, maybe something to look into. Then we see Sharks hosting Munster. Listen, Munster is not doing bad at this stage, so Sharks will definitely need to up their game. We also saw quite a decent crowd back at Durban, and after they won last week, I'm sure we're going to see again. And I think Munster is a bit of a crowd puller. They do have a nice fan base here in South Africa as well, so I think we'll see a lot there. And then, Peter.
This is its time, eh?
It's time. Leinster Lions, the table-topping 2 teams, the Lions away. They'll be playing in the Viva Stadium in Dublin. So this is going to be a tough one. This is going to be a big one.
Both unbeaten.
But Leinster being that team, I hope the Lions still got some petrol in the tank for this last push. So let's see. But a lot to look forward to. I'm really excited. I might need to put on a sick note for Saturday. There's nothing else happening. And I said sick note to the family. So. All right, Peter. Cool. But listen, again, thank you so much for joining me today. Nice discussion on so much happening in the world of rugby. And I'm looking forward to next week. So listen, enjoy the week, enjoy the rugby. We'll catch up again.
Cheers, Scott.
So the Scrumdown is available on Free Vision Play, which is a free streaming platform presented by Centec. So all our details will be below the screen. So if you guys want to see more content, sports content on Sports One, Peter is the host of the morning news program. There's a whole bunch of other very interesting programs, including features on boxing, slap fighting, and all the rest. So a lot to look forward to there. So have a look through it. It's live broadcasts on this free application. There's also News One, our sister channel, bring you all the latest and greatest news. So have a go, have a look, and we'll see you next week. Thank you so much.